Hello again. Thank you for reaching this new session. So let's give some time to everybody to connect and open the different windows to access the session. So let's wait a little. I will start with a quick recap of the navigation tips, how to ask question, how to find the different question pools we prepare for you, how to access the presentation material. Then I will introduce the topic and our presenters for this session, and I will give them the speech to cover the topic for this specific session, which is related to data loss prevention. So UI masking, masking of sensitive and private information inside the SAP systems. But let's start with a recap of the navigation tips. So first of all, you can ask your question using the chat inside the passable windows. So feel free to create your question. You can find in the pools area two question forms available for you to for us to have more information about what are your requirements, your key topics currently around protection of sensitive data. In the file section, you can find the material for the presentation. At the end of the session, I will send you again this URL to access the file form for the full AIS session. What is your feedback? What were your main point of interest? What you would like to see for a next conference to be organized? And so let me go back to the topic for today. So UI masking, masking of private information. So our presenters for today's session are Anthi Macha, who she's a service manager at Roche Diagnostic, and Kshamatha Eda, sorry for the pronunciation, she's a senior consultant with a specialty around SD, financial FICO module in SAP. So they both work at Roche Diagnostic, and Roche is one of the leaders for pharmaceutical and diagnostic sector, and the world's largest biotech company. So I will give the speech to Anthi and Kshamatha. You can share your screen and start the session. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the invitation to present the Roche experience on user interface masking. I trust that my screen can be seen.
Yes.
Also, warm welcome to the audience that chose to hear about masking from Roche. My name is Anthi Macha. It's not Macha, but the only country that I hear it is in Germany. So as a service manager of the AmeriCommercial's ERP system, serving approximately 30 countries, I will try to help you with the IT support related perception and aspect of UIM.
Hi, my name is Kshamatha Eda, and I've been as a technical consultant at Roche for more than 10 years, transitioning into a techno-functional consultant in finance and controlling. I help with the implementation of UIM in two of the systems at Roche, and I would be giving an overview on the installation and the configuration in the SAP system. Back to Anthi.
So starting, why we're using SAP user interface masking. Let me start with what is SAP user interface masking? It is an add-on solution provided by SAP to mask data for unauthorized users, such as personal data, but not only. It does not affect the main application process at all, and there is no business impact. I say this which is of particular interest for quality reasons. Data is translated to the required format before presentation of output on screen. We must clear here that it's not modification of data in some external database before presenting it. Why did we choose masking? The initial need was indeed to mask our privacy data. We wanted to base it on the principle of who needs to see what. And therefore, at the same time, we had some offshore support engaged into the support of the system. And therefore, we wanted to avoid unnecessary display of personal data. To avoid massive downloads of personal information. I must say here that certain countries which are not in the EU do not have the same privacy legislation as EU. And very recently, there was also the invalidation of the EU-US Privacy Shield, which also indicates how privacy is important in EU. I'd say that masking as a tool is best suited for cases where many systems need to mask the same fields. In Roche, we have 3 commercial systems, and at least 2 of them have been masked in the same way. There are variations, but the bulk of it is practically the same. Masking of few and very specific entities, for example, customer name or some governmental identifiers. And the system is best suited when it's based on substandard transaction. If there is a lot of custom-made transactions and applications in SAP, then there might be some extensive support needed for coding with custom coding, the masking tool as well. With this, I would like to hand over again to Kshamatha to give us some tips on the installation and how we customized certain cases.
Thank you, Anthi. When we decided that we would be using UIM as the tool for the masking of the sensitive data, we had to think about the key features like the system compatibility and what are the key fields that need to be masked? Is it just a few key fields that we need to mask? And the different transactions that this field would be called, we have to consider all the transactions that would be calling these key fields. In all these scenarios, the data has to be masked, and the role has to be created, or the standard role that is provided by SAP has to be assigned to the unauthorized users. Taking into consideration all these, we decided on the compatible add-on for us. That was SP04, SP05 in 2 different systems. Basis helped with the installation of the add-on. There would be an SAP master note that would provide all the information of how this has to be implemented. Next slide, please. Once the installation is done, SAP has provided us with the installation check transaction, which would give a very good overview on the readiness of the system. One key factor over here is the profile parameter has to be set at the system level in order for the UIM to be active in the particular system. Initially, when the installation is completed and we run this transaction code, you would see that the status is all in red or yellow. And we have to walk our way through depending on the different steps over here, following all the different nodes if they have to be implemented from S node. There could be implicit enhancements that need to be activated, or hard modifications based on the SAP nodes. As this was in the initial stages of UIM, we had to walk through each of the node and apply it manually in the system in some of the scenarios. Once all the installation nodes are applied, the basic settings and the configuration can be started. The bottom part where you see the basic settings check and the other checks is the main indication for the configuration to start. Next slide, please. This is the IMG screenshot that we have over here, where the field masking for SAP GUI is provided. All the configuration can be done in this part of the IMG. Next slide, please. Another key factor over here is we can have different clients in the system. So in order to activate the masking in each client, we have to check this master global masking switch. If this is active, it means to say that the masking is active in that particular client. If you want to deactivate in one of the clients, you could. In our scenario, there could be like a development box, and there could be the testing box. So for the developers and the for the functional configurations that need to be done, it could be in one client where we can deactivate it. But where the data is there and the data has to be masked, we activate it. Next slide, please. This is the main feature, or the main configuration screen that you are seeing over here. So once for our requirement, for example, if we had to mask the customer name one, we give the table name and the field name over here. There is a provision for the role that needs to be assigned for the roles. One of the key features over here is that SAP requires this role to be assigned to authorized users so that they can see the data as unmasked. But at Roche, we had to reverse this functionality a little bit because we didn't want to make any changes to the existing users, not to change any kind of profiles. We just wanted to assign the new role to unauthorized users, like when we are onboarding offshore counterparts to the different systems we have. So this will be defaulted in the roles in the onboarding. Another key feature over here is masking control indicator. If this box is checked, this means to say that this particular field is active for masking. So the data would be shown as masked data for unauthorized users. If this is unchecked, then the data will be unmasked. The other one is the field is HR relevant, which we haven't used, but basically what this means is the particular user who is logged on, if it's unauthorized, they would be able to see their personal data, but will not be able to see the rest of the other users' personal data. If we want to change the pattern, how the masking is done, it is usually default to all stars for the length of the field. We can change in the masking pattern at the bottom of the screen. You can set different patterns and set the mask override. There are two main approaches for masking: hook point approach and the conversion exit approach. Conversion exit approach is more modification at the domain level, which we haven't implemented. We have used the hook point approach. This means to say that the field name, wherever is it is set in the different screens or the different transactions, we can provide it in the configuration, and it would mask the data. One key point over here would be that the primary key or the foreign key or the currency keys, currency fields cannot be used in the conversion exit approach. So we need to make sure that it is set as a hook point approach. Next slide, please. The main, for all the transactions, wherever this field is being called, we need to make sure that it is masked. So SAP has provided us with the mask configuration, which is highlighted in yellow in the screenshot. Once the field name is set, you can click on this icon, and it will take us to the next screen where you would see the different applications and the different screen fields provided. You can select or unselect the different lines over here. and click on the generate customizing. So all these fields will be that need to be generated for the masking will be moved onto the main screen, which can be set in the main configuration, which you can see in the next slide, please. So over here, as you can see that the program name and the screen name and the field name is provided. So all these scenarios where all these screens would be masked. For example, customer name can be in the master data in the XD01 or VD01, but at the same time, you can also see that in the sales orders. So we have to consider the different transactions that can be called, and here the functional team and the users can help you the different transactions that can be used. And it is very critical that we understand all these points, and in our test that we check it is masked for the users, unauthorized users, and unmasked for the authorized users. Next screen, please. Another key point is once the configuration is set, you need to activate and generate so that the masking is active for all the screens. So this is one of the examples to do a quick check if the masking is active or not. If you go to the data browser and run for KNA1, you see that the data is masked. Over here, we need to make sure that once initially you set up the configuration and come to SC16, you may not see the data as masked. It would be unmasked. You need to make sure that you generate the table before you run this data browser so that the data is masked, just before processing to the output. Next screen, please. Here is another example. This is a customer master screen where the name is masked. Similarly, the next screen can show you it is from a different screen. That in the table control or in the sub screens also the same name is masked. So the different scenarios have to be considered and made sure that the transactions, whatever the users are using, that the data is masked. I'm just stressing this a lot, but because it is very key and important to make sure that different screens that the users might use need to be masked. Next slide, please. This is on the screenshot where we mask the long text. This is not a standard functionality. So with this, we can go to the next slide. These are some of the custom features that we have at Roche. There was a requirement that the long text, some of the sensitive data is also populated in the long text, and we need to make sure that the data is masked. So locally, we had created an implicit enhancement local modification where we have implemented it in the read underscore text so that the data is masked for the unauthorized users. There is all the initial versions that we were at, the download functionality or the custom function codes that were needed to be disabled and which were not already in the existing versions. We created custom code for it as well. But to my understanding, the later versions have, this is a standard feature. We will be exploring this.
I can confirm that it's now a standard feature to automatically disable the download or even print capacities.
Okay, thank you. And the feature was in the iDocs also the same name. For example, the customer name can be seen in the different segments. This is not a standard functionality, but we have used a standard, a mix of standard and a custom functionality over here. SAP provides this table, encrypt, decrypt display, where you can provide the iDoc type and the segment name with the field. We have used that, but there is also the function module that you can use for encrypt or decrypt. Instead of the standard one, we replaced it with a custom function module, which would actually check if UIM is active, then only enable the masking for those particular fields. As we have some of the custom code that we have enabled, we wanted to make sure that we followed a standard. And for that, in the custom code, we made sure that the first step would be to check if UIM is active centrally in the client. If the field that if we are looking at the field that needs to be masked, and check if the role is assigned to the user, because this is a reversal case for us, not the standard functionality. And then if all these are true, then only go ahead with the custom code to mask that particular data. So with this, these are the custom features that we have. So on the point that I wanted to bring up is initially when we started, we installed this in 2 different systems. The implementation was in 2 different systems. There was a little bit of analysis that we had to do in the first system. So it took us about a month because there is a lot of coordination between different teams. But the second implementation was pretty fast from start to finish along with the testing. It took us about 2 weeks. And this is a team effort from the bases, the security team, from the functional team, the users, as well as from the technical team. So that is in short an overview of our implementations. It has been very successful. With that, I would like to give it back to Anthi.
Thank you, Kshamatha. So here with the inherent features at the time of UIM were ready to mask standard or custom database tables, the search helps, ALV reports, table controls in subscreens, standard transactions, custom transactions, and also the download functionalities as a spreadsheet or as a word processing, as well as to send and list as email attachment and execute a report in background. With respect to the subscript, subforms, and as well as adopt forms, smart forms and adopt forms, it was thought to be really cumbersome, something like that. Really, the effort was really high, and there was much more hard coding masking. Does it really serve this purpose than masking? With long text display, it was not possible, but with some custom coding, we made it possible. Also, the same is with the iDocs, as you saw. Debugging does not make really sense to do it because debugging is really to find a problem and you need to be able to see the data. With function modules, it was not possible, and I think still seems not to be possible, also with the RFCs. Unfortunately, it's not possible also with the SQL commands editor and SQL queries, so SQVI is not possible. What we learned out of this experience, some points here. You need to really balance between the effort for custom masking and the security requirements. In certain cases, we got benefit from the company authorization policies, and I will speak about that here. What is important is that a user which has a create or change authorization should be a user that is authorized to view the transactions. Unauthorized users will not be able to create new records or edit data. This happened particularly with the long text, where in our test we suddenly realized that when somebody goes to support, it was possible maybe to add a field on the screen, and then we would save stars in the database. For us, really, this policy helped us in order to clarify that and became really solid, where IT users needed for the support have only display access in business transactions. And when there are changes needed, then we use a firefighter user ID. And that is because the firefighter user IDs do not have masking, and at the same time, they're monitored. So there is a frequent review every week of the firefighter usage. And on a monthly basis, there is a review and approval by the system owner service manager, and all that in the frame of the internal controls over financial reporting that our company is compliant with. Now, masking is a very easy, really, as Kshamatha already presented it, is very easy to implement. Even though we had a lot of custom coding because of our own transactions. our custom transactions. However, with the years, we see it as a basic tool, indeed, but out of a security toolbox that we have. And so other concepts or tools would be the code review. Currently, we are in the process to implement the ATC. Transport import checks, we have charm, encryption of data in transit. There we have the SMC, RFC, and also the all the security other protections. The blocking of not needed function modules. We are engaging with EUCOM now. Security monitoring of attacks. This is a wider attempt which is undertaken by the group security. It's not really, it's not only system related. And also VPN for special solutions like printers which are outside the Roche network, for example, in external logistics warehouses, etc. And with that, I have completed the presentation together with Kshamatha, and I would like now to proceed with the hands-on, but we need also, Kshamatha, would you take over?